1880s, 1890s, where it was built all along this stretch were cast iron warehouses. And that's where all the garment was done. Now, a cast iron building, like I said, is going to have a cast iron skeleton, these columns. But the facade of the building can be brick, stone, cast iron, or a combination of the two. Up on the left, these two buildings have cast iron fronts, and they were warehouses. District labor workers. And even though they were just warehouses, they had that very opulent, beautiful look to them. And those facades are really just ordered right out of this very opulent look, but they're very inexpensive. They're just a place. You can take those columns, rearrange them, paint them back. That's cast iron. It looks like brick. Here on the right, though, this is a cable building. For 7 years, our trolley run by under the basement of the at 30 miles an hour. The problem was, it was very dangerous. The trolley could only be unattached from the cable. It could not go the speed. So when he was transferring from one line to the other, he actually had to go really fast to build up enough momentum so that he could keep it until he made contact with the other cable and these parts of the Dead Man's Curve up by Union Square. So only for 7 years. Up there on the right, that side of the wall is called The Wall. It's by Forrest Monk for decades, so everybody knows that. To the left, the red Roman building, and Romanesque is just like whenever you see an art. That's the Cup building. That's where Grace had her studio. Right now we're south of Houston. We're off the grid. And this is, if you do the downtown tour, this is a great place to go shopping. There's the Abercrombie and Fitch place in the door there. Alright. So, like I said, you see here mostly are warehouses. And all these lofts, they're not today. And then a warehouse top. This was a dry goods store. And Prada has an award-winning interior, actually like a skating ramp, just about to see it. Right now, as we cross this street, what's this, Prince Street? If you look to the right, see the green and red building? That's a little Singer building. It's actually L-shaped. There's another section of that building which is just the same, on the other side of the street there. Same building. That's where they made Singer sewing machines. It was back in 1902. Here on the left, houses. That's a brand new, not brand new, but relatively scholastic there. But here's an all 1880s, 1890s warehouse. Here on the right. Now these buildings here on the left with the ladies carved up on the upper and the one next to it, look, they're along the side there. That's from before the. That's when this was fine residential living here. Yeah, this must have been beautiful verandas. So this was when they had very opulent European style look to the city. And on the right, we're going to pass by all that's left of the old St. Nicholas Hotel. And the St. Nicholas Hotel, back in the 1850s, was the most opulent hotel of its day. It's actually where the Union Army ran the Civil War from. And no New Yorkers know this. Like, there's not a single tour guides don't even talk about it. Up here, Chase Bank, just Chase Bank on the right. There are two very nondescript looking buildings with a brown facade. There are two. That's all that's left in the Nicholas Hotel. You used to go all the way down to the end of the block. But that's back during the Wild West, Gold Rush. That's when we by Morse code. That's when, in that building, you go in there, that was, all mirrors and glass chandeliers and, shots for the men and all that. That's the most, best hotel. That's all that's left. When we place the other sections, you get two warehouses. That's from the later period when this was the garment district and all the sweatshop labor went on up in there. Here's Bloomingdale's on the left. This building from before the Civil War, that fashionable residential period. And building, that's another building from the Civil War, extensively renovated, one of the most beautiful cast iron there. Horse and buggies lined up for their as a brothel. Didn't work out. Only 15 years. Of course, we had to interrupt that, that gap for the next move up. But yeah, when they figured out that they should separate these districts. And we'll see that on the way back. So here's more beautiful building from before the Civil War. And now we're coming up to Canal Street, and point out this is one of the most warehouses, and that's what it was. Across the street, all those arched windows, that's the old Dittenhopper warehouse. You'd never make a warehouse like that today, but that's all that was. At the time, you know, we're trying to define ourselves as a city, you know, as a new country even. Back in the 1880s, it was a gilded age. Warehouses had that really beautiful, ornate look. Alright, now, we're going to make a left on Canal Street. And that's this next layout. Everything from here up to the railroad. And the railroad building is on the right. And that was the tallest building in the world until 1920. That's on Chambers Street. That's the northern limit of town. Impact on the city because of the Irish, the Chinese, the Italians, and the Jews. Because they were escaping strife from their homeland. And they came, especially in concentrated together, and until they could get out of, you know, this pretty own districts, which are. And one thing about doing a bus tour is you can see just how close the districts are to one another. Moved into that land, that landfill called Square, eventually divided 5 points. That's from the Martin Scorsese movie, The Gangs of Five. There's nothing left from that period. An Irish person, not a building. But I'm going to show you exactly where it was because the streets are still there. Street, it's up ahead, called Orange Street, and that was one of the streets that made 5 points. So the Irish 1930s and 40s, potato famine from Ireland. Came next, starting in the 1850s, especially in the 1850s, and they were coming from out west. They had helped with the rush and the Transcontinental Railroad, were discriminated against, and they came here. And China is right next to 5 points, old 5 points. So they just 5 points, and there was Chinatown. The Italians came next in the 1880s, and they were coming from Italy. They were escaping earthquakes and economic depression. What did they do? They went right through 5 points, Chinatown, and crossed Canal Street here, and this was all the way to our left. I'm going to show you all that's left of Little Italy. Now, the Chinatown you see today, which is everywhere, only since the 1960s. We opened up in Chinatown has really expanded all around the other old neighborhoods. So before the 1960s. And the Eastern European Jews coming from the 1880s to the 1990s, and they came, unlike the and the Italians who came mostly, they came as entire families. And they went through points, Chinatown, literally just on the other side of the Bowery is the Lower East Side of Jewish history. Their numbers were not as Italians, but it looked like their numbers were bigger because the Italians went back. Like I said, they came as single males. They went back to Italy at a rate of about 5%. The Jews came as families, and they did not return. They were making pogroms after the assassination of Tsar Alexander II. All right, now as we cross Center Street, look up to the right. Brown buildings with thin windows. That's the penitentiary. That's how close we are to the court district. There's the court district right. That's where that pond was. That's where they put the 9/11 since they had the trial here. The street's right in front of us. This used to be Orange Street. Down then, exactly where the street ends down there, that was 5 points. That's the railroads across the main 5 points. The town came from. Here on the left, this is Mulberry Street. This is all that's left of Little Italy, 2 blocks. Surrounded by Chinatown. A lot of great places now. That's where John Guy Social Club is a boutique now. And up ahead on the right, that's where Chinatown is. So all these immigrant districts are to one another. These 4 nations, Benai Brith, Ancient Order of the Iberia, the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent, so I think I got that right. These 4 ethnic self-help local groups worth millions of dollars today all started within a football store of one each other right here. This incubator for these immigrants. Now we're on because we're coming out of what marshy lowlands, unusable land. That's why they were districts. We're coming up to the. This was the high road, and both Broadway and the Bowery start right under City Hall. By the way, they had a big mountain, 100-foot mountain, right in the middle of downtown. So the way is not a very old. The rest of it up there, they had to connect it with the rest of the trail. But the Bowery intact. This was the very first road. This went up to Boston. The up to Albany, and today that route is called Route 9. And people moved up to where we just came through on Broadway, and the working class filled in the area up and down the Bowery, and the Bowery working class street. So this is the entrance arch for the Manhattan Bridge, also by the same architects of the New York Public Library, Carrera and Hastings. Pretty okay? Here on the right is the lowest side. It runs Court District. And it's all today, back in the 1880s. This was Jewish, and a lot of those tenements were built then. And again, more about tenements, but that's most of those you see down there. Back in the 1850s, this was German and Irish. The city, they live as grammatically the other groups did.
Does it feel really high right now?
Huh?
Really high right now? It's alright.
On the right there, that's our most housing in the city. That's called the Knickerbocker houses. That's actually, it's lower middle class. That's where Jonathan Rosenberg lived, the spy executed during World War II. Alright, so now you're going to hear better views. There's the Brooklyn Bridge. And that's what you're looking at is where the east turns into the upper. And that one landmass out there with the structure on it is island. Brooklyn Bridge. Oh yeah, you stand up around here. You're not There's a Statue of Liberty out there. The Brooklyn Bridge was the Brooklyn Bridge the Brooklyn Bridge were the tallest things in the northern hemisphere. It took 14 years to build between 1889 and 1883. And that bridge was basically built by hand. The height of technology was the peak. So with the main cable of them, the cable that goes from the main down to the roadway is what holds up the roadway. The bridge has all those, but the Brooklyn Bridge has those cables. And those cables don't connect to the main cables above them at all. Those go from the roadway tower back down to the road. They're both time safer than it needed to be, and in case those main cables out, those stays keep the bridge up. That's the right Williamsburg Bridge tower. I always like to get out when we park down there and go right. And Brooklyn has and they built these wooden boxes called cages that were twice the size of a football. In and of themselves, just feet for the day for the. And on the bottom of the box was all open. It saw teeth into the box, and they clad the teeth in. And they floated these boxes over to where they wanted to build. And they started with the Brooklyn Tower first. And they just started building the tower right on top of this caisson. They made the thing sink down to the river. They pumped compressed air, and these guys known as groundhog sand. When in this box, they dug up the river and ended up to the top. And sand high today. Manhattan is the most three-dimensional city in the It goes down 80 stories. That's almost the height of the Empire State Building going down. They're building water tunnels down. depth now.
You know, like
But these sand houses dug up the bottom and dug up the bottom, sent it up, and they built the tower on top. The whole thing gradually sank. And on the Brooklyn side, it goes down 40 feet. It's in solid bedrock. Bedrock, they filled it in with cement. There's basketball. And it's the towers still rest on top of the today. They're still down there. Manhattan side, the tower goes down 80 feet, twice as far, and it never hit bedrock. They're about 12 feet shy of bedrock. Today, the Manhattan Tower just rests on the riverbed. Sample soil samples back then, and determined that the riverbed hadn't had any earthquakes there in like so many, hundreds of thousands of years. It would be safe. But the Manhattan Tower is not on bedrock. But they had gone down so deep that the workers started coming down with this associated with scuba diving called, and some people affect too badly, just caused joint pains, and it killed about 30 workers. And in the case of Washington Roebling, like I said, came down with this chronic paranoia. He couldn't speak, and he just had his body, and he ended up in bed for the rest of his life. And he was in bed overlooking the rest of the construction of the bridge, while his wife Emily dealt with all contractors, all the other engineers. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew all the math. She knew all the formulas. He met during the Civil War. He was building bridges for the North down south. He was building the Union Army, and she was right there along with him, and she was interested in all of it. She learned all of new things. And every single one of the bridges, by the way, that they built in the South, there's none left. But Emily, over the last 9 years, dedicated it. Chester Arthur, who was at the time, he acknowledged after it was done as one of the chief engineers of the. One thing you have to appreciate when we go inside the bridge is people at the time. In 1883, and when people walked across the bridge, and that was the highest they'd ever been in their lives, where the eagles were flying underneath them. The height of the entire skyline, only about 6 or 7 stories. You can see, and you can walk across the bridge today. Back then, you could cross to New Jersey and back to Long Island. In fact, there was a lady who was both when the Brooklyn Bridge opened up and when they landed on the moon. And when asked about the moon, she said, well, she thought it was just great, but it was nothing like the opening of the bridge. This is Cabin Plaza. This used to be the entrance of the Brooklyn Bridge, and these two rectangular sections where the trolley depot is were. And the outermost lanes of the bridge were for horse and buggies. The center lane was for pedestrian traffic, and it still is today. And I highly recommend if you can, if you have the time, the Brooklyn Bridge on the Manhattan side on Central Park. Not that long of a bridge, it's really a mile entirely, Anchorage to Anchorage. Over the river, it's not even a quarter mile, or it is about a quarter mile. And it's one of the things you can do with your time. Yeah, it's the traffic, which is really amazing. Walking over the bridge, you won't see or hear cars, and it's still exactly the same way today. And after the bridge, the first week, there were 20,000 people on the bridge, and someone started spreading a rumor that it was collapsing. Everyone panicked, ran to the exits, and they ended up crushing about 10 people. The next week, after P.T. Barnum marched 21 elephants across the bridge to prove that it was safe. And that's how dumb people were back then. People on the bridge. If you march 20 elephants across the bridge, it's safe. But after he did that, then people were comfortable again, and people used the bridge. So we're going to pull up alongside the Anchorage second. And the Anchorage of the Brooklyn Bridge on the Manhattan side actually goes over Cherry Street, 3 Cherry Street, where George and Martha lived in the very first White House. It wasn't a White House, it was the first presidential home, and now, of course, it's underneath the anchorage. That's what we do not venture past here in New York City, Philadelphia, or Boston. A number of reasons for that, and we'll talk in a few minutes. But we have very few historical sites left from those early days. And directly ahead of us, the way across the bridge. It's one of the best things if you have any time to do it. Is taking the Staten Island Ferry. The Staten Island Ferry from Lower Manhattan from the back. It's free, 4 hours a day. It leaves an hour. It takes about 20 minutes to get to Staten Island, and along the way you have spectacular views of the Statue of Liberty, Governor's Island. On the way back, you have a great view of the line. And again, it's free. If you have tickets to the Statue of Liberty, you can save a lot of money, and the experience is almost just, and you'll save a lot of time too to do other things. Here in Staten Island, you just get on the return.